Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tobacco Road and Abroad. My name's Gareth, joined by Aiden Moore. We've got a lot to talk about today and not a lot to talk about today. It depends on how you want to look at it. In terms of like actual things on the agenda we want to bring up, not much, but we've got a lot of nuance we want to talk about today. So,
Indeed.
anything particularly you want to get started with? I know we talked about starting with NFL. Which one of these games would you like to start with?
Let's start off with the Chiefs and the Bills. I feel like uh, that game was it was really like to me that was my Super Bowl right there. Um, Buffalo, they're the four falls of Buffalo and that famous 30 for 30 talking about the four Super Bowls that Buffalo lost. The new age of the four falls of Buffalo is here, and it's just the four falls of Kansas City. They cannot get over the hump when it comes to Kansas City. This is getting sad now. Um, Buffalo just unable to compete with Kansas City. Buffalo had to be perfect on this one. Uh, just the Kansas, like, first off, I want to say this Buffalo Bills defense was put on fraud alert right now. This year is not the year that Kansas City has the most electric offenses, but they absolutely just lit it up across the stat sheet. Kansas City was just had a field day. Patrick Mahomes being able to throw for 245 yards, one touchdown. Kareem Hunt having one rushing touchdown. It was just, it was a sad showing for the Buffalo Bills defense. We Patrick Mahomes also going to rush for two touchdowns. There's no other way to put it. Kansas City just owns Buffalo right now. And I believe once we eventually go into our Super Bowl breakdown, probably next week, we're going to talk about who we think is going to win in the matchup. But spoiler alert right now, I got Kansas City all the way. And it just has to go with number one, their offense really started to pick it up and they just absolutely torched this Buffalo Bills defense. And number two, another key to Kansas City's success, I felt like lied on the fact that the Buffalo Bills offense needed to be perfect to line up with Kansas City on this one. And the Buffalo Bills just did not have that ability to be perfect. It came down to fourth down so many times, and being perfect on fourth down is something that cannot like be done. It's just something that it's just not possible. Like, yes, you can be in the positives when it comes to fourth down conversions, but it's very highly unlikely in a game like this you're going to be absolutely perfect on fourth down, which gets us into like some controversial calls with the refs. At the end of the day, like, we can cry and gnash our teeth all we want, but Kansas City just proved to be the more solid team offensively speaking. Their offensive line just an absolute powerhouse. Really great in moving the ball downfield. They have a solid run game. They got the speed. They got all the offensive tools. And this game proved that their offensive tools are clicking now. Deep into the season, they still have the ability to click, which is making me very positive in my affirmation that I think Kansas City is going to win the Super Bowl. I just think there's no way we can stop that. Any team can stop them right now, especially how fundamentally sound they are on offense. And if you look at their defense, like their defense wasn't absolutely perfect this game, but you can't. They're not perfect. You don't need to be perfect to at least hinder Josh Allen's ability, especially if it comes down to Josh Allen's going to be carrying the team on his back, which unfortunately was kind of the story of this game. So, Gareth, do you have any major takeaways that you want to bring up?
Um, the only thing I will say is this was like the one game this year where I felt like the Chiefs could really move the ball efficiently. I mean, other games, sure, they've had some dominant wins this season, but it was never like that. It was never on like the backs of their offense. It was always like the defense was generating turnovers. The defense was putting them in very advantageous spots. This is the one game where I feel like, yes, the defense did do their part for Kansas City, but it was like the offense finally showed up. It wasn't necessarily the Kansas City offenses of old where it was like, Patrick Mahomes throwing for 400 yards a game. Because teams have adjusted to that. Teams expect that now when they play the Chiefs. Teams expect that Mahomes is going to throw the ball really well. And he did throw the ball in this matchup, but not necessarily as much as you'd expect him to. A lot of their success came on the ground, particularly getting Mahomes out on the move. People just respect his ability to throw the ball so well that they kind of, even in play action situations where it's like, it's short yardage and they're either going to run it up the middle or Mahomes is going to throw it. Everyone drops into coverage and Mahomes is able to, on several fourth downs, was just able to scramble for that 2-3 yards that he needed, completely unimpeded, like no defender, absolutely like no defender even near him. It's like those replays that you see of those Peyton Manning bootlegs from back in the 2010s where it's like no one expects him to run. And it's like he literally walks into the end zone in those. And that's what it was. Patrick Mahomes was able to walk for several 4th and 1s. And usually on a 4th and 1, the quarterback's running for his life. Like, oh, I need to get there. Patrick Mahomes had time to just waltz there. Like he really didn't. And like you said, the Bills defense didn't exactly play great. I wouldn't say fraud alert, but this is a Buffalo defense that has really struggled against the run this year. And that's essentially what Kansas City did. I think a lot of teams this year got caught up in the fact that, even though Buffalo's offense is more balanced out, it's not just Josh Allen slinging the rock. It's, they can run, they can run Josh Allen, they can have sweeps to tight ends, sweeps to receivers. I think teams got caught up so much in Buffalo's offensive firepower that they tried to outshoot Buffalo instead of just play the game of football, instead of just, play situational football, run the ball when you need to run the ball, pass the ball when you need to pass. And I think that's what Kansas City did. Kansas City stayed fairly balanced. They didn't get drawn up into this idea of they need to outshoot Buffalo, which I feel like when you try, even Kansas City to a certain extent, if you try and outshoot teams like the Commanders, like Buffalo, like the Chiefs, you've already lost. So that's just essentially trying to beat them at their own game, and you're not going to do that. Like, those are 3 of the best teams in the NFL, and if you try and beat them at what they do, you're not going to win. You've got to play your game to win. So that's really all I'll say. And I'm not saying the Chiefs defense played bad when I say, this is the first time the defense didn't win them the game. I feel the defense did make several clutch plays. And like you said, there were controversial calls, but there's always going to be those. But I will say, despite those, Buffalo still had several chances to win the game. Yes, there were some egregious calls, but like we have both said, Buffalo still had ample chances to win the game despite those. Yes, it would have made it easier for them to win had those gone Buffalo's way. But, I did think it was interesting that Gene Steratore made a few comments on it. Gene Steratore, who is notoriously pro Kansas City, I didn't think there was as many egregious calls in this game as there have been throughout the regular season. That was better than I expected it to be in terms of the Kansas City getting the calls trope. I expected a little bit more out of that. Those were still bad calls, but I wouldn't consider some of those necessarily world ending, if you know what I mean. Like we've seen throughout not necessarily as world ending as that Bengals game to start the season. That was interesting, but that's all I've got to say. So I guess you ready to move on to the Eagles game?
Yeah, this Eagles game, what can you say other than just physical football wins the game, wins the day for Philadelphia. Saquon Barkley rushing for 3 touchdowns, Jalen Hurts rushing for 3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts also had a pretty solid day performing through the passing game with 246 passing yards, 1 touchdown. Just an overall route for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Washington Commanders just weren't able to keep up. Jaden Daniels played very well, I'd say adequately for a rookie in an NFC Championship game. There was 1 pick, but throwing for 255 yards and 1 touchdown, I wouldn't say is absolutely abysmal stats. Those are pretty respectable stats, especially in a game like this. But in most games, maybe scoring 23 points might get you a win, but against Philadelphia with this caliber of offense where they can just absolutely rout it on you, it's not going to get it done. 55 points for the Philadelphia Eagles. This game was just like, I don't know, like other than saying like it just felt like it was over. Like it just always felt like Washington was playing catch up, and once it got to that fourth quarter, it was just like, oh, it's getting ugly. But I like this Philadelphia Eagles team. I really like Saquon Barkley and what he's been doing at Philadelphia. I'm really glad that he's been able to kind of make a better name for himself for the Eagles instead of just absolutely dragging the New York Giants on his back. Like it's great to see that he's surrounded by a team of this caliber, of such a strong offensive line that's able to really capitalize on his talents. The Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, like yin and yang. I really like seeing that. And I think maybe the last thing I want to mention is, like, can we stop this narrative that, like, we need to ban the tush push? Like, get over it at this point. Like, yes, the Eagles are good at it, but you know what? They're the best at it. Teams have tried to replicate it, but nobody can do it quite like the Eagles can. And if you can't stop it, just get over it at this point. Like, I'm tired of people saying like, "Oh, it's not in the spirit of the game." This is just classic football right here. If you don't like it, just turn on basketball or something like that, because this is just vintage football, and I love seeing it. I love seeing just the mass move forward in this tush push, and I like everything about it. I don't like these narratives surrounding it that we need to ban it. Like that's just sad and pathetic in my mind. But I did think it was funny how when Washington was trying to like stop it, they would like jump off sides multiple times, and eventually the refs had to say that they would just give the courtesy points to Philadelphia if they continued doing that. I've never seen that before, but that was just an interesting headline. Like taken away from an otherwise kind of boring game to watch, because this game, it was just it it was over like pretty soon. Like once we saw like things clicking and going into motion, I knew. I was like, Philadelphia is going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and one thing I will say when it comes to the Commanders jumping off sides, from what I have heard and like the research I've done, when it comes to trying to stop the tush push, I don't necessarily remember like the entire like context of every single time it happened, but it's not uncommon for the defense to line up in the neutral zone on accident, particularly in those short yardage situations, because how you stop is you have to get as close to them as possible so they can't even generate that momentum to get going, and you have to
They're
get
trying to
lower
put
than them.
Troy Polamalu it though by like jumping over.
Yeah, and it's just no matter how you stop it, it ends up with like a lot of times the defense just ends up off sides anyway. And from what I've seen is I forget who it was, but Aiden sent me a video of like this ESPN analyst going, "I don't like this. This isn't rugby." I'm like, buddy, like it. There's this one guy on Instagram that I follow called Dan Casey. He's an offensive coordinator for a high school team, but he's like blown up just because he highlights plays that he likes and that he implements into his offense. Like he highlights professional plays, college plays. That's what he calls primordial football right there.
Mm-hmm.
He initially used that quote for Army's quarterback power out of under center, but then he's also labeled the tush push as primordial football, and he puts in parentheses compliment. So it's not like he's knocking him. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, that is, in essence, that is like the most basic football play you can run. Like, side note, there is a college team whose entire offense, like their base play is a tush push. Division III, they are a military college. They do run the option, but they run it out of more power-based formations, unlike these spread formations like Army Navy. The U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, their base play is it's a similar formation to the flex bone. It's called the double wing, except for you trade those running backs for tight ends, and your base play is either a dive or a tush push. And if you can
That's
get your hands
beautiful.
on some Merchant Marine footage, they average like 400 rushing yards a game. And if you watch the tush push, like Jalen Hurts very often doesn't just get the inches. He ends up 3-4 yards downfield after the scrum. And
Yeah.
if you're getting 3-4 yards a carry, that's a first down every 3 to 4 plays. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So for those of
That's
you,
what I don't like, the people saying like they're getting 3 to 4 yards every play. That's a first down. This needs to be banned. I'm like, don't blame them because it's working. Like, god damn, like this is like this like pansification of football is something I'm not for. What are we saying? Like earlier in the year, there was somebody. What is it? Mel Kiper said that we need to ban like the too high safety look because we weren't getting enough passing yards apparently, and now this narrative is we can't do the tush push. I'm sorry, like people need to get over themselves right now. It's like I hate using the excuse it's a game, but it's a game and this is how the game's played. If you don't like it, maybe basketball's more your taste, but this is a physical game. And the same people I hear saying, like, it's usually the same people, which is ironic, saying, like, oh, this game's soft. This game, the NFL players now can't handle the NFL the way it was back in the early 2000s, or the NFL in the 90s. But now, like, we're all pissing our pants because of a QB sneak, which is like a day one. That is the first play you learn in Pee Wee football. Like, we need to stop this. Like, so what? Jalen Hurts is like literally the best QB sneak artist of all time. It's an art. We're learning that it's an art. We need to get over ourselves. Bro can squat 500 pounds, and your QB can't. Get over it. Listen, our QB can't. I love Bryce Young. He probably can't do a tush push in the same way as Jalen Hurts. You're not going to see me complain. You know what? I hope we can find new plays that we can create that has the same effect, that like the same consistent outcome.
yeah. But what I'll say about this game is this was when I mean old school ass open, I mean in quite the literal sense. Like, not often do you see a team win by 55 points, and the majority of their points were scored on rushing touchdowns. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that is like proper, like 1990s, 1980s old school ass whooping. They didn't just like, it's not like today where like you can get your ass beaten. It's just a team like the quarterback picking you apart. No, like you lose by 55 points and they passed all over you, you lost. They beat you by like 45 plus points and they ran on you. No, you got beat. That's the difference between getting beaten and losing. No, you got beat. They beat the Commanders.
Yep.
So, like I said, no shade to the Commanders. You made it a lot further than you were supposed to. You had a rookie quarterback absolutely wheel and deal and not look like a rookie quarterback in the process. Made very few mistakes this season. Looks high upside. You know, there's no shame in this loss to the Commanders outside of the fact you got like absolutely physically dominated in every aspect of, them being on offense and you being on defense. They ran all over you. I mean, your offense still put up a decent showing. Your quarterback just absolutely lit the league on fire this year. Go out there, have a successful draft. You could have a really good year next year.
Yep.
You could this year was already this year I'd say was miracle run by their standards for what they were expecting out of this
You're
year.
playing with house money like this playoff. You're playing with house money. So it's all up from here, hopefully.
Yeah, and I know that's not going to console, the Commanders fans that wanted to see a championship this year. I know, and this was the first year they've been in the playoffs in God knows how long. So I get it. We get the pain, but, the amount of ways that you can, mess up this offseason are slim to none. Like, if your coaches and your staff somehow messes up this offseason, they tried to mess up. Like, if the Commanders don't make the playoffs this season, they had to have tried not to make the playoffs next season. That's what I'm saying. This team, they did a lot with a little. And if you add more to it and have a very successful draft, get some good trades in, they could be, I mean, they already were scary this year. They could be really scary next year. Now, as for the Eagles, you did what you needed to do. You ran the ball well. In order, now I won't go too in depth this. We'll talk about this more in the Super Bowl. if you're going to win the Super Bowl, you're going to have to run the ball really well against this Chiefs defense. You're going to have to do you're not going to be able to do what you did to the Commanders, but you're going to at least have to somewhat do what you did to the Commanders. You're going to have to dominate. You're going to have to fire off the ball. You're going to have to set the tone really early in this game. You're going to have to set the tone because no matter how slow the Chiefs start, it's like basketball. You know, when you somehow find yourself up in the first half against like Kansas or Duke or Houston or Gonzaga, and they're just, they're not really gelling in the first half. Your team's made some mistakes, but you're dealing, like your team's on fire. The shots are going to start falling. They're going to wake up. So that's what Philadelphia's going to have to do. Philadelphia's going to have to come out. They're not going to have to, necessarily pass all over them, but if they're going to have to come out, they're going to have to set the tone physically. They're going to have to jump on them, and they're going to have to essentially come out and smack them in the mouth. And not essentially have to come out there and just play old school football. They're going to have to play their game. They can't do what these other teams do and, try and outshoot Kansas City. No. They've just got to go out there and just try and – essentially, they're going to have to do Notre Dame strategy on this one. Just – I'm trying to say this word less on here just so, in case, like, people ever see this or if, this gets big. But the whole meme was that Notre Dame's offensive plan for that first half was run through a motherfucker's face. That's exactly what Philadelphia is going to have to do. They're going to have to use Hurts. They're going to have to use Saquon. They've got the players in the scheme to do it. It's there for the taking for them. Do I think they'll be able to stop Kansas City? That's another question. But for what they're going to need to do to win, they are certainly capable of. But that's really all I'll say. Just kind of an old school ass whooping, like 1990s style. They ran all over you. It wasn't just like they picked you apart. They beat you up in every sense of the word beat up. So still, like I said, amazing year for the Commanders. Eagles this year, I feel like outside of a rough first two games have really kind of quelled the doubters. Only thing else I'll say is the Panthers are currently the only team to score the Panthers are currently the team to have scored the most points against the Chiefs this year. Outside of that Mickey Mouse ass Denver game. Outside of that Mickey Mouse ass Denver game where the Chiefs essentially played their practice squad.
Mm-hmm.
The Panthers have scored. I think it was either the Panthers have scored the most or the second most points against the Chiefs this year in a single game. Like I said, minus that Mickey Mouse ass game. So that's all I have to say about the NFL. Or do we want to talk about the Pro Bowl at all, or is it just kind of? I have some thoughts about the Pro Bowl, but it's not necessarily about the players. It's about the format.
I mean, we can. Well, the main takeaway.
Sixth alternate, Drake May. Sixth alternate.
Yes, of course. I want to just talk about Drake May, Pro Bowler on a technicality. So I don't know how many people deferred, but we got Drake May playing in the Pro Bowl game. So that's amazing. Already solidifying his case for being the next New England GOAT. So I love to see it. I don't think Tom Brady got in the Pro Bowl his rookie year. So Drake May better than Tom Brady? ?
You know who made their Pro Bowl their first year too? Another New England rookie quarterback hopeful, Mac Jones.
Yeah.
Let's hope for for what's his name, for Drake May's sake, his career doesn't go that way. Yeah. Another quarterback who also made the Pro Bowl their first year from Carolina, Mitchell Trubisky. Let's hope for his sake his career. Well, Mitchell Trubisky had some good years in Chicago. He took them to – didn't he take them to an NFC Championship against the Eagles? And they lost off of a doink? Or they lost off of the double doink.
Yeah.
So – I do think he's a fair better quarterback than both of those. So,
I mean, does the Pro Bowl game mean anything anymore? Because I remember growing up, like the Pro Bowl was something special. Like I just have so many, like I'm not going to sit here and say like the Pro Bowl is like peak of my football memory, but there's a lot of fun memories that I have from like watching the Pro Bowl. Like I think of the last snap of Jeff Saturday to Peyton Manning, where Jeff Saturday switched sides and gave Peyton Manning his last snap. That was a really cool moment because those two like lifelong friends finally like coming together for like one final play. That was a great moment. But if I'm thinking of like classic Pro Bowl moments, this is a little bit of a reach in the memory box, and you might not remember it seeing it at full time, but I just remember seeing highlights of it. Sean Taylor, like absolute. So he was playing return. He absolutely lays out this punter who's running a fake on the Pro Bowl and just like gives the hardest hit I've ever seen. Like, just got to go down as like the top 10 hits of all time. I think that play might have done irreparable damage to, rest in peace to Sean Taylor, by the way. Absolute Miami legend, Washington legend, tragic story. But that is probably like one of the plays that just like made people realize like, hey, we need to stop taking the Pro Bowl so seriously, because he just absolutely laid. I forgot who the punter was, but if you know what play I'm talking, if you know that play
I
was
know what play I'm
absolute.
talking about.
Yeah, if you know, like that play is absolute legendary. That made like so many like YouTube mixtape highlight reels, like top 10
NFL's
hardest.
most violent hits.
Yes. It would just, and like two of them would be that play. That would be number two
Yeah.
and number one.
I want to
But
say that was Johnny Hecker that got hit, but I think that was before Johnny Hecker's time.
yeah. But like that's another like classic Pro Bowl memory that I have. A more recent one, what was it? New England legend Mac Jones doing the gritty into doing the gritty into the end zone. That was not a bad omen for his future career. Let's I want to see Drake May gritty into the end zone this year. I think that would be beautiful. But do you have any
Part
Pro
of
Bowl
my,
memories?
not that I can think of, it's just my issue with the Pro Bowl now is it's a damn flag football game. Like, come on. Like, part of me was even frustrated with the Pro Bowl the last couple of years when it just kind of became just a recess game.
I
Like,
mean, like I kind of like it as a recess game now. I mean, like now that we know that CTE is the thing, and then like concussions are actually bad, maybe it's not a good thing that we're laying like an all-pro punter out on a
okay, well, I
fake
think
play.
okay,
like
that thing is
like
that's
I
an
under
outlier though. That's an outlier, if
yes,
I'm being honest.
it's an outlier, but like they've always been like offensive showcases.
Oh, I
Like
don't mean that. I'm talking like people actually taking it serious. Like even when they weren't offensive showcases, or even when they weren't I mean like I'm talking early 2010s. I'm not talking about late 2010s where it's like the defense is just standing there NBA style. I'm talking like early 2010s where the defense is just getting cooked and they're still doing their best. Like they're trying and they're still getting cooked. Just because it's like you've got fucking Calvin Johnson getting thrown to by Peyton Manning. He's gonna dice that defense up all day if he's got Calvin Johnson out there. Like you are giving some of the best. I mean, the NFL at the end of the day, like football at the end of the day, is a offensively minded sport. Like particularly in the NFL with how the NFL rules work, the rules favor the offense. Even back before all this, Aiden and I've talked about this soft NFL. Like even before that, I'd say until maybe the 2000s, like right around the 2000s, the NFL's rule books really started favoring the offenses. You're already in a game where the offense is very favored. You're telling me you're going to give probably one of the best quarterbacks, if not the second best quarterback, if you the best ones in the Super Bowl, you're giving the second best quarterback, the best receivers in the NFL, the best O-line, and the best running back, and you're telling me he's not going to cook? You're telling me bro's not going to just I feel like it's easier to gel together an offense than it is to gel together a defense in 2 weeks. Like offense, you can get some base plays. We'll have 10 formations for the game. We'll have an inside run an outside run, and a gap scheme run out of each of them. And then we'll have just a bunch of pass plays. You don't even need to have set pass plays. You can just have – you're telling me you're in the Pro Bowl and you're telling Peyton Manning, yo, buddy, we're going to run, explode to X, Y right, post smash. No, Peyton Manning's just going, Calvin, run a go, and I'm going to find you. You're telling me – like, I guess the Pro Bowl, and there's like a recess aspect. I'm fine with that recess aspect. I mean, I'm just talking like, we're sitting there. The play clock's expired 25 seconds ago, and Odell Beckham Jr. is still doing like whatever line dance on the midfield logo, and they haven't snapped the ball yet. There should have been 4 delay a game penalties at this point, and everyone's just stopped to watch and dance. Like, I get the Pro Bowl is fun, seeing the players have fun with all the skill games. Don't get me wrong, love the skill games, believe me. Most fun part. Some of the most fun part. But I miss just watching, Peyton Manning just absolutely these offensive, the most, having offensive, the best offensive minds in the NFL paired up with the best players just wail on a woefully underprepared defense. No shade of the defense, but defenses have to have chemistry. They have to have camaraderie. The players have to, they have to trust these other players, when you have a defense that you just a hodgepodge defense that you just thrown together, Jimmy at corner doesn't know the safety has his back.
It's not Madden. It's not Madden. You can't just throw a bunch of different people together and there's actual schemes that you need.
You can do that on offense.
On offense, you can get away with it. It's also, you do rely on chemistry on the offense, but the defense is necessary to game plan because okay, what are we going to do with this look? All right, in this case, we're going to fake a blitz. We're going to put pressure up here, but then we're going to drop back. There's actual schemes that need to go into defense that you're not going to get with the Pro Bowl because nobody really cares.
And like you said, and to kind of bounce off of the scheme thing, certain teams do different things in different situations. Some teams send the house on third down, and your responsibility is to be that lone man back. Your responsibility is to be that last line of defense while your D coordinator sends the house. Some teams, okay, we'll drop 8. We've got 3 absolutely war daddies on the defensive line. We'll drop 8. Or, well, against this team, when they motion empty, am I supposed to corner blitz or am I supposed to drop into the flat out of 21 personnel? Like you said, there's just – I know defense – Aiden – I think this was the point Aiden was trying to make. Defenses seem simple, but there's so much their playbooks may not have as many plays, but each play is several plays within itself on defense because it's you could call cover 2 and cover 2 on first down and third down while you call the same play could look very different based on what formation they come out of. There are little tweaks. In the NFL, particularly, this is starting to seep its way in college. They don't play straight up cover 3 anymore. They play what they call match coverage, which means it's zone coverage unless certain parameters are filled. This is a big thing that Nick Saban came up with, along with cover 6 and cover 7. But that's a complex thing we'll get into later. It's a hybrid coverage of cover 2 and cover 4 that helps you deal with heavily unbalanced formations like trips and stuff like that. But like you were saying, there's just so many intricacies on defense where it's like I said, cover 2 on first down looks a lot different than cover 2 on second down. Line or what's it? Owen's favorite play from Madden: all dogs go. All dogs go on 3rd and 1 could look very different than all dogs go on 3rd and long. You're going to have different coverage rotations. You're going to have different stunts, different defensive line moves, different looks. It may come out of a different looking formation. The Pro Bowl, the defense is already at a severe disadvantage. And like I said, you're given Peyton Manning, you're giving him Calvin Johnson and other people. You're even Calvin Johnson and Wes Welker and Gronkowski in the same offense. You're telling me they're not gonna cook. So that's all I've got to say about the program. And I realize Calvin Johnson and Peyton Manning would never play on the same Pro Bowl team because one was NFC and one was AFC. But my point still stands. Anything else you want to add on to the Pro Bowl?
I don't want to add anything else on the Pro Bowl, but there is something else that we need to bring up in the world of football.
Oh God.
This isn't what you think it is yet, but the 2025 Senior Bowl is also this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, this is going to do numbers in the summer when there's no football on and the NFL Network's just scrambling for things to put on. Because rewatching the Senior Bowl in the middle of like July, honestly, peak. But
You and I will be busy with College World Series, though. Unlike
oh
other
yeah,
people, Aiden and I religiously watch college baseball,
oh
which
yeah.
starts next week. Mark your calendars.
Let's go. But nah, I'm really excited for this Pro Bowl. Uh, Not excited to watch it live. I'll probably watch it later on a rerun. We're not going to cover it next
Sometime
week.
in March.
Sometime in March. I'll watch it rerun. But I really like it because I like the state of the transfer portal now, and where like every player, like, wears a helmet of their old team, but then now we got like all these transfer players that like try to make hybrid helmets sometimes. I'm excited. Like, I want to see like the Duke and Notre Dame collab that Riley Leonard might try to pull. But I have an interesting poll. We might never say his name again, but if we do, you've heard him here first. But Taylor Elgersama is playing for the national team on behalf of Canadian players. I just did a Wikipedia on him. This man plays Canadian college football, and he has made it to the Senior Bowl.
It's a different sport. Like, I know it's not, but like they've got different rules. Receivers can start in motion. The offense can false start and get away with it.
Bro, I literally just found him right now. Like, this guy is pretty insane.
What's his name again?
Taylor Elgersama. Elgersama? Elgersama.
Draft prospect?
ELGERSMA.
Is he a draft prospect?
He's literally a month younger than me. Bro is our age. Well, granted, all of them are, because like we're graduating college, but I don't know. This is just some random dude from Canada.
You know whose Senior Bowl I'm excited for after all the stories you've told me about him?
What?
DJ Pounds.
No, he's going to Ole Miss.
Yeah, I'm excited for his
Diego
Senior Bowl
Pounds.
next year. Oh, Diego Pounds.
Diego
My
Pounds.
bad.
Pantana Bob's legend, Diego Pounds. He's transferring to Ole Miss now, but we wish Diego Pounds the best. Pantana Bob's legend. We love Diego Pounds.
We know where all his NIL money went too. Aiden's pockets.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
But we love Diego Pounds at Pantana Bob's.
One thing I will say about the Senior Bowl is I've been paying a little bit of attention. Is one thing that I found interesting is how like I always thought the Senior Bowl was a great way to like raise your draft stock. But if like players played bad, from my understanding, I always thought they just didn't put too much stock in it either way. Like, if like one guy's able to light it up with like an offense he's never been with, like, that's a good sign. But like, if they struggle with an offense they've never been with, okay, bro's been with the offense a week. It doesn't matter. Like, it was very much like when your teacher gives you that like on like your final exam of 8th grade or final exam of like senior year, and it's like, this question can only help you. Somehow we've gotten to the point where the Senior Bowl can hurt you, because from all the drills they've been seeing and all the stuff they've been airing, Jalen Milroe, apparently his draft stock is plummeting by the second. And I'm not relishing in this. I'm not bringing this up to like, say yay or anything. I'm just saying this is interesting to me, because the Senior Bowl or even the East-West Shrine Bowl was always something where it was like, it can only help you. Like, and Do I think Jalen Milroe is overrated? Yes, but in defense of Jalen Milroe, my point is he's playing with an offense and he's running drills with dudes he's probably never even met before. And you're like, bro, you suck. He's throwing to receivers who like aren't used to him throwing to him. He's throwing to receivers who, similar to how Aiden and I talk about how each defensive scheme will have its own intricacies. Like two teams could run a 3-3-5 and run it completely differently, and it could look completely different on the field. Like he's throwing to receivers who, like, an out for one receiver is completely different than an out from another. Receivers will run a post completely differently, and it'll have the same end result, and like the same like end part of the route will look the same. But like their takeoff, like their breakaway from the defender could look completely different. I'm not saying we need to feel sorry for him, but at what point has the Senior Bowl become kind of like, you know what I'm saying? It's meant to be this fun thing, your last hurrah. It can help your draft stock if you absolutely ball out, but if you like struggle, you're out there with some randos. Like you've had a week with them. Like, so the game hasn't even started and these scouts are like, yeah, Jalen Milroe's stock's plummeting. Okay, I'm sure half these other quarterbacks are playing like ass as well. You're just zoomed in on it because it's Jalen Milroe. Okay, yes, that one video of the drill he was doing the other day where he threw like 4 straight picks. Okay, I admit that's not a great look. But like I said, these are receivers he's not even used to playing with. Like it's like people just need to chill.
I'm watching Taylor Elgersma highlights right now.
Taylor Elgersma.
He's got like 20 views on YouTube. Yo, Canadian college football is a real thing.
He's a full-on prospect too.
Yeah, no. Look at this.
Whose helmet is he wearing in the Senior Bowl? Because
it's gonna be weird. Look. This is real. This shit is real. I'm not sure if it's pulling up right now. Like, yo, Canadian college football is a real thing. Look, they're gonna start running up. Yeah, this is real Canadian college football. Yo, he's kind of got an arm on him. I want to interview him for the pod.
Well, I can DM Taylor. We can DM him. We're gonna have to grow our Instagram account a little more, but we'll see. We'll DM Taylor Elgersma. I'll get on the.
There's 2 people I want to interview here. That is CF Budge and now Taylor Elgersma.
CF Budge. Why not Diego Pounds?
He has nothing to say to me. He only gives me money.
He only gives me money.
He only gives me money to skip the line. He doesn't say a word to me. He just says, here, does this help me pass the line? And I say, yes, it does. Have a good day. Have a good time in there, Mr. Pounds. I don't call him Mr. Pounds. That'd be weird.
I don't call him Mr. Pounds. That'd be weird. All right. Anything else to say on the Senior Bowl?
I'm not going to make the joke that my boss tells me every time that Diego Pounds enters Pantana Bob's.
Okay, all right. Moving on.
No, I'm next episode I'm going to be studying up on Taylor, and I'm going to be fully knowledgeable in Canadian college football. This is my new niche. This is my autism.
You're going to buy the Canadian college football
I don't have autism, but if I did, this would be a new special interest.
My God. All right. Moving on. College basketball. This is arguably where I've got the most points and like most things I want to talk about, but anything you want to start with?
Nothing matters anymore. I know that Canadian college football exists.
Nothing matters anymore. I know they can. So, I guess I'll start off.
If I learn this is like in the spring, this is going to be like a new way of me just being a degenerate gamer. I'm sorry, you guys are just witnessing me like learning about a thing live. Like I've just learned that Canadian college football exists. My whole life is a lie. I did not know that existed up there. I just thought Canadian like pro football was just like a niche thing. Like not a niche thing. I thought originally, like I know it's like big in Canada, but I always thought it was like, you know what? like they were like, you know what? Yes, it exists. We support it, but like I didn't know they had like actual infrastructure. And I thought it was just always like, oh yeah, we get some of the college players who didn't make it to the NFL and they come into the CFL and we just make weird rules and this is our rules for the CFL. And I was like, okay, cool. But like, no, this like Canadian college football actually
Yeah,
exists. Like,
it
oh
is.
my
There's a
gosh.
YouTuber I watch, a Madden YouTuber who played Canadian college football that I watch. I forget his name. I think it's like TD Barrett or something. He played Canadian college football. They even have high school football up there too, because there's some Canadian players in college football that have come
Well, yeah,
from Canadian high schools.
yeah. Like I knew in college football, there's like some Canadian players like Chase Claypool. He's from Canada. And I was like, oh, well, like, you know, maybe they just have like football there. But like I never like I don't know. Like I feel so stupid for thinking this, but I never thought there was actual Canadian college football. I just thought they just had like a couple high school teams in Canada and they just played like US rules. Like, you know, like maybe they like play New York teams or like depending on where they are, maybe they played like New York, Minnesota, or like North Dakota teams. And then it was like, oh, they just so happened to be in Canada. I didn't think it was like actual thing. This
Yeah,
makes so much sense now. Like I know why Claypool is the way that he is.
yeah.
It's about, oh my gosh, this all makes so much sense now. Okay, we can move on to college basketball now. Anyway, there's nothing to talk about for UNC. Like we kind of suck right now. But what do you want to get into, Gareth?
Only thing I'll talk about is that was gotta be that NC State Duke game was there was just something weird going on in Cameron that night. The vomiting incident where you know that was just odd. The vomiting incident. They said that the player that threw up, was having trouble keeping things down. So naturally, the trainer told him to drink a whole bottle of Gatorade, which if you're, and I know, if you're throwing up and your stomach's not feeling great, Gatorade can be good for you to help replenish those electrolytes, but not if he's struggling to keep like mid-game snacks down. Yes,
Yeah.
drink a whole giant bottle of Gatorade. Shout out to the Joe Obius and Joe Giglio again. He told a story at the Carolina Panthers game where he's like, the second I heard about that Duke player, on Twitter having trouble keeping things down, and then I see the trainer hand him a red Gatorade, he's like, I knew it was over. He's like, I took my son to a Panthers game, and he's like, his stomach was rumbling, and he goes, I had him drink a little bit of Gatorade. He's like, oh, just take a sip. And he's like, it was free refills. My son got like 3 massive cupfuls of Panthers Gatorade, and he's like, he was throwing up all over the place. He's like, I saw this coming from a mile away. He's like, I watched this play out 5 years ago at a Panthers game. So, only thing I'll say about this game is, State came out. They played well. I mean, they sucked this year. They played well. If they play well the rest of the season, obviously they won't make the tournament, but I think they could make some noise in the ACC, play spoil. I will say it always sucks when you don't make March Madness, but it is a little fun when you're that team in any sport where it's like it's clear you figured it out and people have like a newfound respect for you, like how the Panthers were towards the end of the season. Like, you're bad. Like, you had some really bad losses, but you figure out, and, you can kind of play spoiler for certain teams where it's like your season's completely over. But, like, you come up against a bubble team and you just beat them, and it's like, your season's over too. Your season's done. That's how it felt being a Panthers fan this season. Towards the end of the season, you beat a team. Your season's over now, pal. So my goal is Wake Forest comes to town in March. They're on the bubble. We win. Hey, buddy, your season's over, pal.
Yep.
But no, the most frustrating thing about this NC State team, there's a stat that's going around on Twitter. NC State is currently sitting at 10-11. NC State is 6 made baskets away from 14-5. 6 made baskets away from 14-5.
Holy cooked.
Like, our record is bad, but how do you be that bad and that good at the same time? That you are 6 made baskets away from 14-5. Like, losing to Duke, yeah, it stings, but teams rarely ever win in Cameron. Like, you're lucky if you win in Cameron once a decade. Like, unless you're a fellow ranked team, you're lucky if you win in Cameron once a decade or once every 5 years. But like, I don't know. That's been keeping me up at night. That we're 6 made baskets away from 14-5. And I know there's always a cliche, well, this team feels like last year. This team kind of does feel like last year. Last year, at the end of the season for NC State, before obviously the ACC tournament, I'm like, damn, like, this team's kind of good. They just can't hit shots. Like, they're scheming open shots. Like, they're good looks. Their defense is solid. I have the same feeling about State this year. Our defense is better than it was last year. This is the most solid an NC State defense, like a defense on an NC State basketball team has been in years. But similar to football in classic NC State fashion, statistically one of the best defenses in the ACC. Offense has nothing to show for it. Defense bails us out, gives the offense a chance. The offense can't convert. But I will say, arguably, the biggest college basketball news of the day comes in 2 parts. Ed Cooley is now 0-4 against Providence. Providence, despite an early onslaught from Georgetown, Providence beat the shit out of Georgetown this past weekend. And a Georgetown team that's been fairly hot. They're 13-5 now. After losing to Providence, they're now only 13-5. They're a very solid team. They've beaten some really good teams. They had some, early questionable losses. But for some reason, they're still in the bubble. If Ed Cooley wasn't the Georgetown coach, I'd almost feel bad for them for being in the bubble at 13-5. I'd almost feel bad. But Georgetown could be 34-1, and I'd say leave them the fuck out of the tournament. Leave them out. But the bigger part of the news is I was listening to an interview today by Rick Pitino, former Providence coach, actually. Former Providence coach when our family friend, current coach at Santa Clara, was the assistant at Providence, Small world. Small world. So, Rick Pitino is being interviewed about John Calipari's return to Rupp Arena at Kentucky. And he's saying, be nice to him. Don't josh him, It's parts, and like all the fans are like, oh, boo, he sucked, You forced him out. Like, I kind of feel bad for the guy. I mean, obviously this guy, Calipari, did Bryce Hopkins wrong. So that pisses me off. But, Bryce Hopkins then came running to Providence and had a generational season that year. So I can thank John Calipari for not playing Bryce Hopkins enough, where he retained his red shirt and decided to transfer to Providence. So had 2 legendary years before he tore his ACL. But he was saying, like, or what's his name? Patino was saying, like, when I made my return, like, I got a return to, like, I think he made his return to Louisville at some point. He goes, I still got a standing ovation. I didn't get booed. He's like, even the Kentucky fans who were my rival at Louisville, he's like, I got like a standing ovation after I did something for the state of Kentucky. Like, he's like, I got a standing ovation. He's like, if you can like clap for a rival coach, you can clap for your coach who did so much for you. And yes, in the end, he was unsuccessful. And, he himself knew, like, that he needed to leave. He needed to change. He read the tea leaves was his exact word. But
what else did he say?
The context that he said in this was he's like, I've talked to other coaches who their homecomings weren't so sweet. He's like, I was talking to Ed Cooley the other day, and he's like, how he was treated in his return to Providence by the student section made him cry.
Go off.
I know I'm always I can be very critical of Providence. Never been prouder to be a Providence alumni. Never been prouder to be a Providence athlete. We made essentially the second worst betrayer in history cry. If you told me that the Providence faithful would somehow make Judas Iscariot's second coming cry,
oh my gosh,
when I first committed there, I'd be happy. That is actually crazy, because in the press conference after the first time we beat him, he's like, I feel nothing. He's like, you should be thanking me. I built this culture of success here. I built this culture of hostility. And to find out he went home and cried. He went home and fucking cried. Like, bro.
He just decided to leave, didn't he? Like, he didn't, like, it wasn't like tea leaves or anything like that.
No, it wasn't. He had just won the Big East the year before and was a 4 seed in the tournament. He just won the Big East. Yeah, it was a down year, but it was only a down year once he decided to leave for Georgetown and told the players before the season was over, and everyone started playing like shit. Providence was like supposed to be a top, like Providence was supposed to be like a 2 or a 3 seed that year. That was the year you texted me after we like put complete BTA to like number 3 Marquette. You're like, holy shit, these guys can ball. You were like, holy shit, these boys are good. He's like the ACC baby cooked. And then, you know, they find out that Ed Cooley wants to leave for Georgetown.
Big East when it comes to making loyal coaches.
Big East when it comes to making loyal coaches. I know. It's bad. There's a double entendre in there for those of you who know about Ed Cooley and cheating on his wife with one of the undergraduate female trainers.
I totally said that on purpose.
Aiden, when he finds unrealized success, I totally meant that. But no,
might have even been a triple entendre there.
Triple entendre too. Who knows? Triple entendre, yeah. But no, it's like, you know, he decided because so essentially the coach he grew up idolizing was John Thompson. Legendary Georgetown coach, won multiple national championships, you know, coached Patrick Ewing, like some of the best Georgetown teams in history. John Thompson was a Providence player, then went on to coach for Georgetown. Ed Cooley grew up idolizing John Thompson. Ed Cooley grew up in Providence. John Thompson was a favorite Providence player. Yes, Ed Cooley grew up cheering for Providence, but John Thompson was his favorite coach. He wanted to become the Georgetown. He even talked about how when he was little, he wanted to become the Georgetown coach just like him.
Mm-hmm.
His goal was to be the Georgetown coach. But then when he became the Providence, he's like, no, my goal is to stay here forever. I love what I've built. After, you know, winning the Big East, I believe he said this is the best place on earth. Fast forward 8 months. No, I'm not leaving for Georgetown. Providence's AD is retiring. You know, I forget his name. I should know his name. I've been in his office before. We're not going to get into that story, why I was in his office, but we're not going to get into that.
That's a story for another day.
That's a story for another day. What's his name? I forget.
That's a summertime story.
That is a summertime. That is a summertime story. What's his name? Oh, John Driscoll. That's Driscoll. It was AD Driscoll. Driscoll, show guy, awesome dude. Love Driscoll. Driscoll has just decided he's going to retire. You know, we're getting Steve Knapp. Love Steve Knapp. You know, big proponent of the swim team. Thank you for throwing $72,000 at the Providence swim team. That's more money than we know what to do with. But Ed Cooley decided to take advantage of, you know, a new. I don't want to call him naive because he was our assistant AD, but you know. It's your first day. It was his first couple of days in the office. They decided to have him take over, like, you know, before the end of the year just to get his feet wet. Like softball and track was still going on. So, you know, there's a few sports going on. So he could like handle like easy stuff. But like, you know, it's kind of how in a football game you give like a young quarterback a few just give me throws to get him into it. Like they put him in, they had him start then just so it's like, you know, we've got a track team that wins NCAAs. We've got a softball team that really struggles, so like there's no like pressure for success, you know, like the give me throws.
Yeah.
Then along comes Ed Cooley. Ed Cooley knows this is happening. Ed Cooley knows John Driscoll is stepping down after March Madness. Driscoll goes, Cooley, don't do it, and then he retires. Ed Cooley had known since about February he was going to because one of my friends in my chemistry class went on Zillow. And this was in March. You know, Providence had just lost in the NCAA tournament. And he goes, yo, bro, Ed Cooley's house has been on the market since January. And you know when that coincided with? The horrible slide Providence had started to go on. This Providence team had just taken BTA to Marquette twice. This team had just beat the crap out of number 4 UConn at home. Like, all signs were pointing. This team may not win a natty, but this team could make a deep run. All of a sudden, inexplicable blowout losses. inexplicable 3, 4, 5 game slides. By some miracle, still makes the tournament, despite getting absolutely housed in the first round of the Big East tournament. Like, this Providence team had no business being in that tournament. Like, yes, they had early quad one wins. They had the quad one wins. But you know how they kind of take into account, like, who's trending upwards. Say, like, there's two identical teams. They have the same amount of quad one wins, finished about the same in their respective conferences, but one was trending upwards, and one, their success was more towards the beginning of the season, like November. Mm-hmm. They'll usually take the team whose success was more recent.
Yeah.
Providence was the former team, the one where their success was, early in conference play.
Yeah.
So you get what I'm saying. That Providence team did not deserve to be in the tournament, but I was still happy to watch them. They played Kentucky. They lost by like 5 points. I mean, that was the game where I played. I don't know if I can say this on there. Or they had a player named Jared Bynum who in our Sweet 16 run, beautiful shooter. He was that, that frisky 12 seed shooter who was either hot or cold.
Mm-hmm.
Dude could not hit the broadside of a barn this year. I played take a shot every time Jared Bynum misses, and I was drunk before halfway through the first half. Bro started the game like 0 for 7, and I'm like, I need to slow down. So I slowed down, but funny enough, after the game, all of a sudden, Providence doesn't even get a notice. Georgetown announces Ed Cooley as their new head coach. Ed Cooley hadn't even said he was leaving. I got a notification on Twitter from the Georgetown AD because I'm like, I should keep tabs on this. I'll follow the Georgetown AD. I'll follow the Georgetown athletic department. And it's a video of Ed Cooley in a press conference in Washington, D.C. That was the most hostile I've seen that campus. The Ed Cooley poster in the campus bar lit on fire. The campus bar, for those you don't know, is in the basement near, the student union. It's right across from the radio station where I worked for a year.
Wait, so there's an actual bar on campus?
Yeah, McPhail's, yeah.
Oh, damn.
It's not like a bar. Like, they serve, beer and a few mixed drinks. Like, you can't go in there and get absolutely housed.
Yeah.
It's it's a school-sponsored bar. Like, the bars you go to get, housed or off-campus, obviously.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's interesting.
It serves food sometimes, just okay food. Not bad. Yeah. Really good milkshakes, Go there for a game of pool. They always got any game you could want on in there. They've got, any sort of sports subscription.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know. I mean, I know it's a Catholic
I walked by and the fucking Ed Cooley poster's on fire. I was going the student union, it's been a rough day. I didn't do so hot on my organic chemistry test. Our star head coach has announced he's leaving for the bottom of the barrel team. I'll go to the student union, grab some sushi, and just walk by and the Ed Cooley poster's on fire.
Inside?
And people are cussing and swearing. Yes, inside. And I leave to go home after my lab. I went to get food before my lab. Like I said, I saw that. Went to my lab. I'm walking home. Hanging out of the balcony, off of almost every balcony in this one building called Suites, which ironically, what do you think the rooms are all in this building? Suites.
Yeah.
Off of every balcony, it's fuck Ed Cooley, fucking traitor, all sorts of stuff. And public safety's freaking out because they're sending out emails. Take this stuff down. This is a bad look. And they're got on ladders trying to climb up the side of the building and take it down, but the ladders just weren't quite tall enough to get it. So, but no, that's the Ed Cooley story. I just think it's hysterical that we made him cry. I just think that's hysterical because he acted all tough in the press conference. He acted all tough in the pre and post press conference. He acted all tough again in the second press conference at the away leg where we won by even more. He even tripled down at the press conference I was at in Madison Square Garden. He tripled down and lost by 20. I don't regret my decision. Buddy, you were at home crying. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. You bitch. Shut up. That's all I'll say about that. About the Providence side. Shut up. Cool. What?
Damn.
Is that a little far?
Nah, that's good. I mean, I thought the Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame was detrimental. Like I was on campus for that. I went to Holy Cross at the time. So if you don't know the Tri-Campus, I was at Holy Cross, just across the street from Notre Dame. Long story why I was there, but it
Summer
ended up
story.
that once again another summer story. But eventually, I became a UNC student, and so that's all you need to know about that. But I thought the Notre Dame reaction to Brian Kelly leaving was interesting, but nah, man, that had lore. That had lore to it.
That isn't even the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more there, but I didn't want to take up too much time. I can tell you about the rest of what happened later. Again, summer story. We could do like specials over the summer where instead of just like when college baseball's over and we don't necessarily have storylines to cover for that, or like soccer's in a dry spell, we could just do like specials. Like we could do a podcast on the time this happened, like one thing I want to do an episode on if I can find it. I never got to finish this documentary. This documentary was made in response for the Georgetown game when Ed Cooley's return to Providence. It was called Divine Providence. It's essentially Providence's version of Survive and Advance.
Mm-hmm.
Only it didn't end with the national championship, but it's just like the history of Providence College, the meaning of the Georgetown game now, how it's, it's created essentially a new rivalry. Like, how every team kind of has you're right. Essentially, they're not your main rivals, but it's kind of like the sense of how you hate teams in your conference more than other conferences. Like they call them in-conference rivals.
Yeah.
Like Georgetown and Providence obviously already hate each other, just like Big East beef. But like, it's now created like these fan bases hate each other now. It's like manufactured hate. Like Georgetown has not been good, and it's like all of a sudden one of the top end teams in the Big East now is like wanting to absolutely pummel some bottom feeder. It's like part of me is like, bro, we're gonna win by 20. Relax. Like we're gonna embarrass the shit out of this man. Like relax, and we're gonna do it twice. Relax. They've now done it 4 times in a year and a half. But no. Elsewhere around college basketball, I don't know if you brought this one to my attention. I hadn't seen this one tonight, but this is a take I've had for a while, but I'll let you introduce this because you brought this up to me. But
Oregon is definitely on fraud alert. From what I have seen, we have been bringing this up before, and it is just something we can't ignore at this point. Oregon lost to UCLA tonight, basically, and in that it was just an absolute rout by UCLA. This game was just an absolute showcase. Just I was seeing it like by the midway through the second half. This game was just over. Overall, UCLA going for its 5th straight victory over a ranked opponent. UCLA has been on fire right now. There was a little bit of they used to be ranked. UNC was actually able to beat them, but then that kind of like started a little bit of a decline. But overall, UCLA has been coming back and making a pretty big name in the Big Ten, climbing up the ranks. And Oregon has just been sliding as of late. Gareth and I were saying, like, we've probably seen more Oregon games than the average fan just by, like, how much we're up, like, and, like, weird hours of the night, and they're the only team that's on. But Oregon, this kind of creates a 2-game slide. They lost to Minnesota, they lost to UCLA, and the rest of their schedule is not looking so good for them. They have a tough pull at Michigan State. That's going to be a tough one. Nebraska has been showing some good signs. That's who they're playing this weekend. And they're going to have to go at Wisconsin, and a lot of their two of their ranked matchups that they have right now are road games. So it's just not looking good for the Ducks right now. Overall, we kind of like knew they were a little bit fraudulent I would like just not proficient in field goal percentage. UCLA outshot them field goal percentage wise. UCLA going for a 55%, Oregon only 41%. The 3-point margin was where the differential was really obvious. Oregon only shooting 17% at the 3-point line, where UCLA was shooting 47%. Those just aren't good numbers. Also getting out rebounded by UCLA. Just overall, a very physical and win for UCLA, being able to kind of dominate in the paint, but also shoot it at a more proficient rate than Oregon. What do you have to take away from this other than the fact that I feel like Oregon is going to be starting to slide a little bit more as conference play starts to continue into the later months?
For me, Oregon, I kind of view them in a similar boat as NC State. I feel like, obviously, NC State does not have the same players as their Final Four run last year, but they were able to retain some of the talent. They were able to get some decent talent on the portal. Oregon was a similar story. Oregon was one of those teams that wasn't going to make the tournament, and they went on a magical run in their conference tournament. They won the Pac-12 against all odds, and they were one of those what people call bid stealers. I don't like that term personally. I just think it's like you earned it. Like people at Providence hated on me saying Providence stole NC State's bid. I'm like, no, State won 5 games in 5 days. I don't think Providence could have done that. Yeah. But now I'm looking back. I'm gonna try and give me a second. March Madness 2024 bracket. I don't remember exactly how many games Oregon won in the bracket, if I'm being honest. But they're one of those teams like NC State where it was like they put the pieces together at the right point last year. And I could be wrong, and they could have gotten some decent additions in the portal. But I feel like they were afforded like certain – oh, they made the Sweet 16. So they made the Sweet 16. My bad. They made the Sweet 16 upsetting Creighton, who I had actually picked to win the national championship in my non-joke bracket. My joke bracket, I had NC State win, and I finished in the top 1% of brackets. Who knows? Maybe I should get drunk and make a joke bracket again. But Oregon made the Sweet 16. I feel like they came into this year a little too highly ranked for my liking. I mean, obviously they retained a little more talent than NC State did, but, you know, and this isn't just because it's NC State. This would be any other team like Purdue. Like, they came into this year ranked higher than Purdue. Yes, Purdue lost Zach Edey, but I didn't think Oregon retained that much of their talent. Like, Oregon finished in the Sweet 16, which, you know, that's hard to do. And there have been teams that have finished in the Sweet 16, and they return all their talent. And, yes, okay, you rank them in the top 10. It's like, yeah, they finished, like, you know, 16th last year, but because they retained all this talent and other teams didn't, they get ranked higher. But, like, Oregon finished in the top 16 last year. But then you have other teams like NC State who retain a decent bit of the talent, and they don't even start ranked. Like, and hindsight's 2020, like, you know, State's not doing well this year. But, I mean, they're still 6 shots from 15-4. Like, I'm just saying, like, and I get preseason rankings, particularly in college basketball, really are just kind of a shit show because again, to use NC State as an example, some teams gel really well one year. They figure it out, and it goes well. Then you can have the same team the next year do awful. 2012 NC State made the Sweet 16, lost in double overtime to the eventual national championship team Kansas by 1. They came back. They started off the season ranked 11th. They finished the season ranked, but then they lose first round in the NCAA tournament to Temple. They lose first round to Temple. Like, so my thing with Oregon is I just kind of feel like they're always in problem. It's like, okay, rank them. I have no problem with ranking them to start the season. It's how high they've continued to stay ranked. And I get they only have like 5 losses, but they are some really bad losses. And I know there's always the argument, you know, if they're ranked that high, they're always going to get every team's best. That's no excuse to lose by 24 on the road. UCLA's not a bad team. Like, I'm not knocking UCLA. They're a solid team, you know.
Really good, actually.
They're really good, but it's a conference game, and I get you're asking a team to win on the road in conference, and any conference is hard. Conference road games in college basketball, like, for most teams, even solid teams that'll make it to the Sweet 16, you're not going to win most of your road conference games. Even some of the best top 10 ranked teams, you're not going to win most of your road conference games. Road conference games in college basketball are a different animal. College football, yes, home field advantage is one thing, but the talent disparity there is a lot bigger than college basketball. In my opinion, the talent margin between Power 5 and even mid-major teams is a lot smaller than the top to bottom of some Power 5 conferences in football. Like, there's more disparity in Power 5 conferences in football than there is in all of college basketball, in my opinion. Because all it takes in college basketball is someone to get hot. If the other team decides they're going to shoot slightly above average from 3 one night, you're most likely cooked. I'm sorry. Like, you could play lights out defensively, and if they just decide one night, hey, all of a sudden they shoot 50% from behind 3, you're pretty much cooked. There's nothing you can do. And that's the beauty of the sport. But Oregon, you're sitting at 16-5 right now, ranked number 15. You do have some good wins, but you've lost to Purdue at home by 7. You lost to Minnesota by 8 on the road. I'll give you that one. It's a road conference game. You beat Ohio State barely on the road. Okay. You lose to Illinois by 30 at home. And this is a bad Illinois team. Like, they're ranked, but they just got there. They just got beat by a not very good Nebraska team. Like, Nebraska's 13-8. They're solid, but they're not like a world beater.
I don't know. I mean, Oregon's going to be playing Nebraska this weekend. We'll see how that goes.
That could be the heat check that we need. Just kind of, that could give us, kind of a clue where the Big Ten is as a whole. Because the Big Ten has been playing a lot like the ACC is in usual years. You can't tell who's good because they're all busy beating up on each other. You think the hierarchy is established, and then the 12-10 team dismantles the clear and cut 1 seed on the road, not at home, on the road. And then it's like your whole idea of the hierarchy gets thrown off. So that's all I'll say on Oregon. One team that I think is honestly, I'm going to highlight this game because obviously it's Calipari's return to Rupp Arena, is Kentucky. This team, I know they've had their ups and downs. They've had some questionable home losses. This team currently has 6 top 15 wins. And damn good ones at that. I think this Kentucky team is poised to make a run. They're hot right now. They could fall off. I realize it's Mark Pope's first year, but honestly, they might be my pick to win the national championship right now. However, history does not agree. I forget who exactly brought this up. I see this on TikTok a lot with the trapezoid of excellence, stuff like that. But when it comes to national champions in college basketball, I think it's something like since 2003. They've all been in the top 57 offenses, top 37 defenses. They do not have a first-year head coach. Like, it's not this coach's first year at the school. And they were in the top 6. They were in the top 12 of the Week 6 AP poll. Every single national champion since 2003 has met those 3 criteria. Me personally, I think this is the year that gets broken, and I think Kentucky's going to do it. And honestly, in my opinion, St. John's may do it. Now, you may be saying, Gareth, there is a 4th category also in there that's less talked about, that most of those national championship coaches are between years 5 and 6. The outliers to those rule have all been coaches in their 2nd year. Who's in their 2nd year? Rick Pitino of St. John's. You know who meets all those criteria except for top 12 in Week 6? St. John's. So, for me, my picks right now are St. John's and Kentucky. I think that those are 2 teams to watch for national championships right now. St. John's is hot. St. John's plays Providence this weekend in one of their few games that they're allowed to play in MSG for the regular season. I think because it's an MSG, St. John's is red hot. It could be ugly real fast for Providence, but, this first iteration of this matchup came down to a buzzer beater. So I hope Providence is able to get revenge, but I don't know. But not to leave you guys on a cliffhanger, the two teams that do match those criteria are Auburn and Purdue. Not sold on either of them right now. So, but we'll see. Anything else you want to add for college basketball? Any matchups you want to look at? There is one that you want to talk about. Yeah,
there is one that is the elephant in the room that must be addressed, and that is it needs no introduction. It is probably one of the greatest rivalries in all of sports. We got Duke versus North Carolina. UNC heading into Cameron Indoor Stadium for the first matchup of Duke v. UNC this year. I'm excited for it, but I'm not going to lie. If I'm excited, but I'm also still very nervous at the same time. UNC has been very inconsistent as of late, eking out a close win against Boston College and losing to Pitt. This UNC team is not in the best of shape and has seen better days as compared to Duke. Duke has just been on an absolute roll, undefeated in conference play. But if there's any shot to take down this Duke team, UNC has got to be perfect on all aspects of the game. They got to get the rebounds, and they got to be better with shooting at the three. This team thrive. This is not the most physical team, but this team's going to have to find ways to get scores in the paint, and then also find ways to get the rebounds. Duke's going to be the more bigger and physical team, but you're going to have to use some of that like rivalry edge. That at this point, UNC's on the bubble when it comes to bracket speak, and with this just recent loss to Pitt, I think they might honestly be first four out. In the scheme of bracketology right now. I know the most recent iteration of bracketology had them last four in, but I think with this loss, we should kind of be considering them out of the tournament right now. What they're going to have to do, they're going to have to start winning a lot, and they're also going to have to need to get right in the ACC tournament. But I'm getting ahead of myself right now. I'm excited for this matchup. It's even if like both teams are having a lackluster year, UNC versus Duke always carries weight, and this year I'm more excited for it than ever. I'm excited to see how this UNC team's going to perform against Duke. I want to see what's the like motive behind the players. I believe they have the motive to win. I'm not questioning that, but right now your back's against the wall, and the only way you can make a name for yourself, everything can be put aside if you can beat Duke. That's how it is at UNC. You can take away all the 9 losses right now as long as one of your wins right now comes at Duke in Cameron Indoor Stadium. If you can spoil that home setting, that legendary home crowds night, like that's gonna do wonders for easing the minds of a lot of UNC fans who are very questionable right now of the direction of this UNC team. A lot of people are asking, should there be a change in coaching right now? I don't want to get to that till the end of the season. I want to see how this whole season plays out, but right now it is not looking good for this UNC squad. I'm still optimistic for the future, but this is definitely not looking like a prime UNC year. This is looking like an NIT year, which is almost like it's unheard of for a coach to have 2 NIT years at UNC. Like that's really ugly, especially at a school like UNC. But I'm excited for this matchup. I hope UNC can come away with the win. If I'm being honest, I just think Duke's physicality is just going to win the day. But I can never get myself to say that I'm going to predict a Duke win. So I'm saying we circle the wagons, we get everybody together, everyone gets right, and this is going to be a game of proving. You got to prove your job, you got to prove your position in this school, and you got to make a name for yourself in a game that is destined to make a name, that makes names out of tons of legends from both sides. This is the game where legends are made of. and you got to make a legend out of yourself in this game. I'm going to go UNC. I don't know. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, for this one, I think if UNC wants to win, they need to take a look at. I know both these teams lost, but these are the only two teams that have come close to beating Duke within the last month. I think Carolina's got to look at not what NC State and Wake did offensively, but what they did defensively to slow Duke down.
Absolutely.
Duke beat both State and Wake Forest, but by single digits, and Duke looked less than convincing on the offensive end. I don't know what specifically it was schematically, but the commentators were talking about it wasn't even like anything that the commentators like, we can't even point it out. There's just something that about the defenses of NC State and Wake that they've made some sort of adjustment that we can't quite place that's giving Duke absolute fits. Duke was yes, eventually Duke figured it out in the second half of both those games, but it's been enough to give Duke fits in the first half. And if UNC is able to capitalize off of emotion, like if they can get Ian Jackson hot from three, like NC State's problem was they couldn't get hot enough. Like they were generating looks and they were hitting threes, but they weren't hitting all the shots they needed to put Duke away.
Yeah.
I think UNC's chances, they're going to need to do whatever State and Wake did defensively to give Duke fits and then put the game away in the first half. Because like I said, Duke's going to wake up. Duke will figure it out and Duke will wake up and you're going to need enough of a barrier. You're going to need enough of a barrier to keep them at bay. Obviously the energy from a rivalry game will give them that extra kick in the second half. Like obviously they did for NC State to keep it close and for Wake to keep it close in the end. Carolina's going to have to essentially get out in front early and stay out in front. And then they're going to have to play solid defense. And like I said, like you said, they're going to have to make a legend of themselves. They're going to have to Ian Jackson, I know he's a freshman. He's going to have to step up. This is going to need to be the Ian Jackson game.
Yep.
And I think part of the reason that State and Wake Forest were able to pull through was, for instance, NC State, the player who was having that game, the Dontrez Styles game, he fouled out. He fouled out with 3 minutes to go when it was a 2-point game. And then Duke pulled away on free throws. I think they're going to have to – what they're going to do is they're going to have to not only protect Ian Jackson and protect RJ Davis, but what I mean by that is when Duke found out that when Duke was able to realize that Dontrez Styles was torching them, what they did was they did certain switches where it would put him on the back foot and they're able to get contact fouls in the lane. They're going to have to do stuff rotationally wise on the defense where they're going to have to get RJ Davis guarding different people on certain trips down there so they can't just target him personally. They're going to have to flip it and flip who he's guarding so he doesn't rack up fouls early, so Ian Jackson doesn't rack up fouls early. Because that was clearly Duke's plan in the second half was they went at Dontrez Styles to get him in foul trouble. What they're going to have to do is Carolina, whoever that hot player is, I'm not saying it's going to be Davis. I'm not saying it's going to be Jackson. I'm not saying it's going to be – it could be someone else. Whoever's hot that day, they're going to have to protect and rotate them around on the defensive end so Duke cannot get to that. I think that's what's going to take for Carolina to win. I think obviously Duke does a good job at winning in Cameron. I don't think it's as hard as people say it is. At least once a year, Duke drops some game in Cameron they're not supposed to. Games that come to mind, Evansville from a few years ago, NC State in 2018. That was the worst NC State team statistically in history. They won in Cameron Indoor by 6. And it wasn't like Duke played bad. It was just that team figured it out for one game and just figured out how to defensively give them fits. A lot of Duke teams are predicated on good defense. This Duke team is all offense. If you can find a way to give them fits and just get out in front, I think Carolina's fine. Now, do I think they're going to be able to do that? I don't know. Maybe Shire learns from his mistakes. Maybe strike 1 and 2 was the NC State game and Wake Forest game, and he figures out this game. Because I think if I'm Shire, I'm worried with how those games went. State's not a good team in the ACC this year, and they essentially took number 2 Duke to the wire. That should be setting off alarm bells with Carolina coming to town on Saturday. That should be like, okay, what am I doing wrong? If they hung in, yes, it's a rivalry game, but they shouldn't hang in there like that. So that's what I'll say on that game. I never really gave my keys for the Providence game, so I'll give that. I think for Providence, you're just going to have to limit this offense for against St. John's. They can score from almost anywhere. Their player that they went after in the portal to be their scoring threat has honestly ended up being their biggest assister. So you're just going to you have to play lockdown defense and hit your shots. That's my thing. schematically Providence is fine, but their issue's just been hitting shots. So if you can hit shots and play good defense, keep our players out of foul trouble, get Richmond back from injury, we'll be fine. But I like St. John's. But you know what? Fuck it, Providence by 2. Anything else we want to add for college basketball?
I don't know. There's a couple more important games I feel like might be worth mentioning.
Oh yeah.
Florida, Tennessee, top 10 matchup. Number 5 Florida going into number 8 Tennessee. Very important game for the implications of the SEC. Tennessee is pretty far back, about 3.5 games behind first, which is Auburn. Florida 2 games behind Auburn. That's really interesting to see, especially like considering that this is a top 10 matchup. But Tennessee has been riddled with some inconsistencies, losing to Kentucky and also losing at Vanderbilt, which was a very shocking loss. Florida recently lost to Mizzou, but also has strung together pretty solid wins against Arkansas, Texas, South Carolina, and Georgia. It's going to be a pretty interesting game. I think it's going to be a get-right game for Tennessee. Just matchup predictor has them at a 70% chance of victory. I like Tennessee. They're at home. This is, if I am not mistaken, and I believe I am not. This is definitely going to be also a good revenge game. Earlier in this year, Florida absolutely dismantled Tennessee and put them on like fraud alert for a little while. Tennessee has been able to kind of rebuild themselves, have some minor bumps in the road, but this is going to be a do or die situation for the Vols. They definitely need to get this win. If you lose to Florida again, I'm definitely going to be questioning their top 10 placement, even maybe their top 25 placement. If they're losing to teams like Vanderbilt, you got to win to teams like Florida at home. This is a do or die situation for the Vols. I want to see domination on all aspects of ball. They're going to have to get better on defense. From that first game against Florida, the defense was absolutely dismantled. They're going to have to get off better shots, and I think that's going to be the keys to success for Tennessee. But they definitely need to get this win this weekend.
Yeah, Tennessee is one of those teams I'm not necessarily very high on, particularly. They started off at number 1 this season, I believe. But for me, I don't. Like you said, they need this game. Their shot selection, like you said, is going to be a lot better than it was in the first iteration of this because that was rough.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. Their first game against Florida was
yeesh.
Yeesh, yes, yeesh indeed. It was. I believe they shot 17% from the field. And was that the one game where they made 1 field goal the entire first half?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, 1 field goal the entire first half. Yeah. Tennessee was down 34-15 at the half of that game, so Tennessee's going to have to take smarter shots. They're going to have to rely on that home field advantage. Tennessee's currently favored to win, but in my opinion, I've still got Florida. Florida's not unstoppable. Florida's looking really good right now. In terms of the net, I know Florida's ranked number, what is it? Florida's 6th or 5th?
Mm-hmm.
Florida's sitting at 4th in the net rankings right now. Number 3 offense in the country, number 16 defense. Really solid team all around. So I like Florida in this one. They take good shots. They've got an offense that can explode when they need to. They can play solid defense when they need to. They can speed it up. They can slow it down. They're one of the, where is it? Let me find it. They're one of the, they play, despite, like I said, playing by playing fast, I mean, they take a lot of shots. They get a lot of possessions. They run a very up-tempo offense. Despite having that, like I said, they can slow it down when they need to. They can find the quality shot. I like that. They're a very balanced team. Like I said, they can run up the score if they need to. They can keep it low if they need to. They can do a lot here. So give me Florida. Elsewhere, another big matchup. We've got number 1 Auburn versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss kind of been up and down. They have 5 losses. They've got some head scratchers in there. They've got some really good wins. 10-point win on the road at number 4 Alabama. 3-point win at home to Texas. Where else? They've got some. Mainly their head scratchers were earlier in the season for Ole Miss. Ole Miss is at home for this game, so I actually am going to lean in the direction of the Ole Miss Rebels. Matchup predictor as Auburn is winning, but I just think Ole Miss, they're not usually thought of as a basketball school, but they're coming off a really strong win at Alabama, and I think if they're able to rely on that home field advantage, they'll be able to upset Auburn. Auburn's not necessarily a team I'm completely sold on right now. Looking at the net rankings, Auburn is currently the number 1 offense and the number 11 defense. They play really fast. They're able to get it going. What is it? They have one of the stronger strength of schedules, but I think that's just they're a solid team and they played a really tough schedule. But I do think that's a little bit inflated, like the SEC as a whole right now. But like I said, Auburn, solid team, but it's college basketball. Home field advantage and basketball, or home court advantage and conference play in basketball is everything. I've got Ole Miss in this.
I got Auburn in this. I feel like they've just been on a roll, and I just default to the role. Their only loss coming to at Duke. They've just been able to string together like very solid win after very solid win. Going at Georgia versus Tennessee at LSU. They've just been on an absolute roll. I like this Auburn team a lot. I know you're not necessarily sold on them. I gotta heavily disagree with you on that. Broome, Joanny Broome just leads the nation, and not leads the nation, but is in the upper echelon of the nation in a lot of important statistics. I was able to get like lots of rebounds for Auburn, able to also able to score in the paint, just a very solid big. Also leads the team in assist percentage. I like his style of play a lot. And I see him being a big factor in this game. Also, very like solid field goal percentage as a big. Just I feel like if Auburn's able to win the rebound battle and control the paint and also spread the ball out, I think they have a pretty nice line up for a successful game, and I got to go with the Tigers on this one, so I got Auburn winning it.
One more game that I think I'll highlight, unless you have another one you want to highlight, which you can as well. Speaking of teams, I'm not sold on them. Marquette.
Yep.
Marquette plays UConn this weekend. 2 teams I'm not sold on. Regardless, give me Marquette. Marquette's looked hot. 3 losses. They're looking good. I'm usually not a fan of teams that run the 5-out offense because, in my opinion, from what I've seen, they're pretty easy to stop. You just have to play a really solid zone defense or really, 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 really disciplined man defense. Marquette's had some scares as of late. DePaul had a scare against DePaul earlier we actually highlighted that game. They had a scare against DePaul. That's the one where Aiden and I were heated about.
Yes.
Aiden and I were pissed off about that one. Marquette actually did lose to Xavier the other day at home, which I think that's flown under the radar.
Yeah.
I think that Xavier's a team where I wasn't sold on them. They came into the year ranked. There was a lot of hype around them for the amount of nothing they did last year and the amount of no transfers they got. So Xavier sitting at 12-7 doesn't surprise me. This win does surprise me, but like I said, 5-out offenses, if you can just play disciplined defense and 5-out offenses take a lot of contested threes when you play really good offense or when you play really good defense. And if those contested threes aren't falling, 5-out offenses can be really easy to stop if you just don't give them open looks. If you play sound and disciplined defense, that's essentially how Providence almost knocked off Marquette in the conference tournament last year. Providence just played a really sound defense, but unfortunately Marquette in that game was just able to hit really wild contested threes, so you can't really complain. So I've got Marquette in this game, minus their slip up against Xavier. They've been pretty solid. The only teams that have been able to take them down this year are Dayton, who Dayton's kind of fallen off. They're sitting at 15-7, but this Dayton team's beaten Marquette, UConn. I think that's just because the A10 is a lot harder than people give them credit for. They honestly put them as a mid-major conference. In my mind, I want to break up college basketball into 3 tiers instead of 2. I think you've got the Power 5, you've got Group of 5, and then you've got mid-major. I think it honestly needs to be broken up by that. You've got Power 5, your multi-bid leagues. I'm talking like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bids. Not necessarily 9, but you get what I'm saying. Group of 5, 2, 3, 4 bids maybe. And then, mid-major, 1, 2 max, if you know what I'm saying. 1 to 2 max. But Marquette, not completely sold on them. I know they beat the shit out of Providence a few weeks ago, but that Providence team is not looking great. But Marquette, I got Marquette this one. This UConn team is bad. Don't know how they're still ranked. They don't have very many good wins. They've lost at home to unranked teams on more than one occasion now. So give me Marquette, despite not being convinced by them. So
Yeah, give me Marquette too. As much as you might not be sold on Marquette, I'm just more not sold on UConn. I just think Marquette, even though their offense in theory should be easy to stop, I think if it works for them, they should keep doing it, and they seem to be doing it at a caliber and an efficiency that works for them. Overall, I just feel like, yes, the Xavier loss does look bad on Marquette, but UConn also lost at Xavier, lost to Creighton, and I'm just not as confident in UConn and their ability to, more often in the future. I don't think this UConn team is similar to like UConn teams in the past where they can make a deep run. I feel like this UConn team just doesn't have the caliber of players that's built for a long tournament run. But I just think this Marquette team's solid, and if they can win the shooting game, get off if their shots land, and they're able to shoot with a high enough proficiency, I think Marquette's got this game in the bag.
Yeah. One final game that I feel like this will also kind of give us a temperature check on the Big Ten to see where they are. I'm not going to go too in-depth on my analysis of this, but Ohio State, Illinois. Ohio State's a team where they've had really questionable losses at home, but then we'll blow out some ranked team on the road. Illinois, been kind of hot and cold. This will kind of give us a temperature check on the Big Ten. Illinois at Ohio State. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Not really going to go into detail unless you want to, but I feel like this is just a game to watch. It's at Sunday at 1. I feel like this will kind of help give us necessarily an accurate gauge on where the Big Ten is, because the Big Ten right now is a shit show in terms of I can't tell who's good. But I think this will kind of help, in like the sandstorm that is the Big Ten right now, this will bring some level of clarity. Like the visibility will increase slightly. Like it's still going to be a complete sandstorm in my opinion, but I feel like this can kind of help us, kind of see who's good and who's not. Now, if Ohio State wins this, that's just going to muddy things up for who's good and who's not. So I don't know your thoughts on it, but
I have no real thoughts on it. Honestly, I don't have that much notes on this matchup. I've kind of been mainly preparing my notes for the MMA segment, so I feel a little bit caught off by this one. But hang on, let me pull up my notes again. Sorry.
All good, all good. I didn't mean to catch you off guard. So
Yeah, no.
you don't have to say much on it. I was just figured this would kind of point out as like a heat check for us, like in terms of like where the Big Ten's at.
Yeah, this is actually a Sunday matchup, correct?
Yep, Sunday at
Yeah.
1:30.
Yeah. Ohio State and Illinois.
Yep.
Yeah. The thing is with Ohio State is they're a very sneaky team. I like what you said with it being a heat check. They can go out and win against teams like Purdue. At Purdue, but then they can also go on a 3-game losing streak against IU, Wisconsin, and Oregon. So it's going to be a tale of going to be are we going to get the good Buckeyes or are we going to get the bad Buckeyes in this matchup? And that's going to be, I feel like, the main determining factor of this matchup, because I feel like with Illinois, they're consistent. Like, for better or for worse, they are pretty consistent in my book. Sometimes that consistency ends up being pretty good in their favor, but then we've seen as of late with like USC, Maryland, and Michigan State, sometimes that consistency sometimes bites them in the rear. With Michigan State, the game was pretty close, and was pretty impressive in my book, especially considering it was at Michigan State, which is one of the top teams in the Big Ten and moreover the entire league. But it's all going to boil down to what caliber of team that Ohio State decides to be in this matchup. If they come up and they decide they want to play spoiler again, I wouldn't be surprised. But I just feel like this is going to be a get right game for Illinois. So I see them coming back in a big way to handle the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, so I don't know if I'll offer a prediction, but I think that'll be it for me for the college basketball selection. I mean, obviously, State plays Clemson on Saturday. I don't know what to feel about this team. If NC State can play the way they did against Duke, I think we'll win. But who knows? I don't know what version of this team we're going to fucking get. So who knows? On MMA?
On to MMA. So this weekend we have a fight night in Saudi Arabia. And because of time zone differences, this card will be starting at 9 a.m. Main card will be starting at noon. So just as you guys are getting up, tune in to ESPN Plus for this fight night, or fight afternoon. If you're watching Eastern Standard Time, I always like these Middle Eastern cards because usually we get a lot of fighters we don't usually see fighting, and moreover, like I kind of like the time slot. Like, is like for me, getting up in the afternoon and watching some MMA and not staying up till like 1 in the morning watching these fights. I personally like it. I know some fans are more into like East Coast bias or keeping the fights in the States. I kind of like it when they spread it out and we get interesting times and for these fights. But this is a pretty stacked fight night card. Honestly, you could make the argument that part of it should be a pay-per-view, but given the fact that it is a fight night, if you have ESPN Plus, you can stream this fight for free. And as I'm going to go down, there's some very interesting fights that I feel like are going to be an absolute steal, and I'm glad are going to be available for free. One interesting fight, we got Saeed Nurmagomedov versus Vinicius Oliveira. I don't know that much about this Oliveira. he is not related to the other Brazilian fighter who hails from the Bronx, Charles Oliveira. I had to look that up. There is no correlation between those two fighters, which I thought this is a okay. So I'm going to be a little bit disrespectful to the fighters, but in the lightweight division, a dream. Well, it's the matchup's already happened, but what a lot of people want to see is Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira. This is going to be like the Timu bantamweight version of this matchup. We got a well, we got a Dagestani named Nurmagomedov, probably related to Khabib. I don't know. More than likely not. He is probably distant cousins or not so distant cousins to Khabib, and probably has been trained under Khabib versus a Brazilian with the last name Oliveira. This matchup has grappling all over it. I'm excited to their striking accuracy has a little bit left to be desired, but then their takedown accuracy for both of these fighters, especially for Oliveira, is pretty good. Nurmagomedov's takedown percentage actually not the best, but he has a pretty solid submission advantage, which makes me think this fight is going to be on the ground and just going to be two grapplers having it out over basically Sambo style grappling versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's going to be a classic matchup. I really can't. I'm going to be excited to watch this. It should be good. I know better than to bet against a Dagestani, so I'm going to go with a Said Nurmagomedov. I think if the fight goes to the ground, which I'm inclined to think it will, he does has the submission advantage. He doesn't have the takedown advantage, but I think he doesn't want to be the one to take it down. I think he's fine with being taken down and then using that to his advantage. That's something that a lot of these grapplers like to do, especially if you're dealing with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One common move that I personally do in tournaments, it's not the smart move, especially if you're not as proficient. I'm not as proficient in grappling as these fighters, but I do like taking the fight to the ground and having the opponent in my guard so I can work submissions from there. And that's where I kind of think Saeed's going to be doing most of his work. I expect this fight, if it goes to decision, I think Nurmagomedov is going to have the what is called the time of most he's going to have most control time. I think he's going to have a lot of control time, but I think he's also going to be able to get that submission. Ideally, if I'm going to have to guess, you heard it here first, a second round submission. That's my prediction. Next fight is going to be a heavyweight fight. Sergey Pavlovich. I'm a really big fan of this fighter. He is a big heavyweight, just knockout artist, and he's going up against, and I have never seen this fighter before, but I guess Sergey is acting kind of as a gatekeeper. Ano Raznestorik. He is from I have never heard. Hang on one second.
Aiden's got to use Google.
I got it. All right. So he is from Suriname, which is a country in South America. I feel Suriname. I have. I've never seen this fighter before. If just looking at his statistics, he has uh, no takedown advantage, no submission advantage. He doesn't submit, but he does have statistically a very good striking game. So I think this, the tail of the tape saying that this is going to be a slugfest. And if it's going to go to a slugfest, I just got to go Survey Pavlich. He's just been more proven in my opinion. Gone up against more higher heavyweights and has kind of held his own a lot better. I just think he's going to take this one. If I had to guess, knockout in the third round, which brings us to our next fight, which is between Sarah Magomedov versus Michael Page. Okay, so one interesting thing about Sarah, he only has one eye, but he has not let that stop him at all. Just absolute unit of a fighter, has been on an absolute tear, undefeated, 15-0, 12 of his wins coming through knockout. Just an absolute beast of a fighter. Going up against Michael Page, who is mainly just a striker. Once again, this is going to be another just major strike fest, and I'm going to be here for it. I'm a little bit skeptical about Sarah. Sometimes, like, some say that he's about to be fraud checked. I don't see him getting fraud checked against Michael Page. I see him just continuing his winning ways, and I see him getting the win by decision. And which brings us to the main event, which is Israel Adesanya versus, this is French, so I'm going to try not to. Nazoro Orin Nazorodonain Amavo. Amav. Okay, so Israel Adesanya versus Amav. Israel Adesanya has been on a little bit of a slide lately, and he is usually a pay-per-view headliner. So seeing him in a fight night is very interesting for me, but I definitely see Israel Adesanya making a comeback now. Like some say that his like championship days are like over now, and if so, that's pretty depressing. So to kind of give you like the backstory of Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya for the longest time had a legendary run at the title, just winning fight after fight after fight. And then eventually, which you will remember this name, he finally fought Alex Pereira. And then once he fought Alex Pereira in middleweight, this was in the middleweight division, not light heavyweight. So Alex Pereira now traditionally fights in light heavyweight. But when he started out in the UFC, he started out in the middleweight because he wanted to eventually take down Israel Adesanya, because Israel Adesanya was talking smack to Alex Pereira because at the time, Israel Adesanya was considered like this almost unbeatable fighter. But then there was footage of him, like very famous, that he only lost in kickboxing to this, at the time, no-name guy, Alex Pereira. So Israel Adesanya famously says in a press conference, this guy's going to be drunk in a bar in the middle of nowhere just saying, I beat that guy, but he's never going to come to the UFC. Alex Pereira eventually came to the UFC and absolutely just wrecked shit in the middleweight division. Eventually, in Israel Adesanya's title run, uh, he basically cleared house in the middleweight division. And in that, the only person that was left to fight was Alex Pereira. And I remember this fight vividly. This was back in like 2022. This fight would have kind of like solidified Israel Adesanya as the GOAT. Israel Adesanya was winning for like the majority of the fight, but then Alex Pereira knocked him out in the final round, and the MMA world went completely mad. Like the king had just been dethroned. Fast forward a couple months to April of 2023. Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya get a rematch. And then Alex Pereira, in the first round, it's not looking good. But then in the second round, he knocks Alex Pereira out cold, does like his famous, Alex Pereira's move of like arching the bow and just like throws 3 bows at Alex Pereira and then like aims at his son and then shoots a bow at his son, figuratively speaking. And then you go like, oh wow, so that's 2 like fights. So we got one for Alex Pereira and one for Israel Adesanya. Like we got to see the rematch. Alex Pereira then moves up to light heavyweight, and then now you've heard me talk about it over and over again. He just absolutely runs house in light heavyweight. It's likelihood of him going back down to middleweight is like almost 0 now. But in this, so Israel Adesanya 2.0 title reign is beginning right now. His first fight in this new title defense of this Israel Adesanya 2.0, as I was calling it, is against Sean Strickland. He loses on unanimous decision. This was like absolutely crazy to me. In the first round, it looked like Israel Adesanya just was like not there. He almost got knocked out in the first round. That's how bad this fight was. Like I cannot explain to you like how bad this fight was. Like this was not supposed to happen. Statistically speaking, this is the greatest upset in UFC history. This was bigger than freaking whatever like boxing underdog story you might have. Sean Strickland was not supposed to be a champion at all. The UFC did not want him to be champion. He is such a liability, PR speaking. But he says the most crazy shit. They did not want him to be champion. They just threw him to Israel Adesanya because they thought he would lose, and they thought that they could finally stop the Sean Strickland hype. There was no hype behind him, though. He was just this internet shit talker. And somehow he won against Sean Strickland, just being like this absolute, just unhinged libertarian dude that just says like the most heinous, sexist, and like homophobic stuff. That's also kind of funny, but like he was not supposed to win. Sean Strickland then loses to Dricus du Plessis. Now, okay, so the reason why Israel Adesanya then has another title fight with Dricus du Plessis. The beef between them was, so originally Israel Adesanya wanted to fight Dricus du Plessis after Alex Pereira, but he just got Sean Strickland. I think it was due to like injury or something like that. Sean Strickland was not supposed to win. Like Dricus du Plessis was the next in line. And there was whole beef behind that because Israel Adesanya started calling Dricus du Plessis the N-word because, okay, so Dricus du Plessis is from South Africa, but he's white. He claims to be the African champion of the UFC, like the real African champion of the UFC. Israel Adesanya is technically from Africa, but his family moved to New Zealand, and then when he moved from New Zealand, he started fighting in China. And when he was in China, he started saying that, quote, "I'm Chinese." It was all for the for promotion. But this piece of information is kind of used as ammo against Israel Adesanya to claim that he's not the true king of Africa. Israel Adesanya didn't like how somebody from South Africa was calling himself the king of Africa, and then proceeded to call Dricus du Plessis the N-word, and on live pay-per-view. This was absolutely insane, guys. This is just like this is just the build up to this. So Israel Adesanya calls out Dricus du Plessis, and basically they're like, yo, we need to have the fight for like who is like the king of MMA in Africa. By the way, in my opinion, it's Francis Ngannou. Like that's probably the pound for pound. Like he's a heavyweight goat. When it comes to like African MMA, I've already talked to him about PFL, and there's already too many characters in this, and I'm already losing you guys. So
I'm still in it. I know what's going on. We're
Okay.
good.
Okay, so Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya are scheduled to fight now. And Israel Adesanya is now basically trying to go for Israel Adesanya 3.0 at this point. And he loses in submission to Dricus du Plessis in the 4th round. And then after that, Israel Adesanya says, I'm taking a break, and just leaves the press conference. And now he's returning. So pretty much this is like Israel Adesanya's, like, he needs to make a comeback now. If he loses this fight, his like it's not looking good. Like the title, his past, I don't know how many fights. All right, I'm gonna have to count this. His past 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. His past 12 fights have involved a title of some sort. This is the first fight he does not have a title on the line. And if you don't know how the MMA world works, like your clock is ticking. Israel Adesanya, like just a couple years ago, was the young face of MMA. Now it's getting the question of, does he have enough in him to do another title run? And which brings us to today, where he is fighting Imavov. This is going to be like pretty major in implications for the middleweight division. If Israel Adesanya wins, pretty much the old guard stays the same, and the middleweight dynamics are pretty set as they are. We got Dricus du Plessis, we got Sean Strickland, who are fighting next week, and then probably the winner of this fight is going to get the winner of that fight. So these next 2 weeks are very important in the implications of the middleweight. If Israel Adesanya wins, he's going to have another shot to kind of solidify himself as a middleweight GOAT, which is something that he really wants. But if Imavov wins, this absolute new face is going to start making a run for the middleweight title. If I'm Dana White, I want Israel Adesanya to win. And if I'm looking at the tape, I got to say Israel Adesanya has got to be the winner, because Israel Adesanya has just absolute, like, probably the most technical striking game in like the UFC. He's called the style bender for a reason. So he is he plays into it because he's a big Avatar: The Last Airbender fan.
Man of culture, I see.
No. This dude's like the biggest weeb of all time, and I love him for it. But his nickname is Israel Adesanya, the Last Style Bender. But his striking, a lot of people in his championship run has called it boring because he was playing it more safe. But in his prime, Israel Adesanya was able to utilize probably the most beautiful kicks and strikes like I have ever seen in the middleweight division. Like, he has just absolute fluid motion, and is just an absolute. For a while, it just looked like impossible to like go strike for strike with him in the cage, which is why it was insane that Sean Strickland won against him. Sean Strickland literally is I'm not going to say like he's just an absolute brute, but if he's almost the MMA equivalent of that guy that says, "Yo, bro, I just see red," but he like actually means it. Like for some reason he actually means it. Like Sean Strickland fights the way your friend who thinks he can fight fights. Israel Adesanya fights like the most technical and most beautiful way like I have ever seen before, which makes me think that he's got this the matchup, because even though Imavov has like the technical takedown advantage, Israel Adesanya has the best takedown defense and usually is able to keep the match up on your feet. If he brings it down to the ground like Dricus du Plessis did, that's usually going to lead to not good things for Israel Adesanya. So if Israel Adesanya is able to keep the fight standing and able to like keep his distance the way he is, some people say his style of fight is boring. I beg to disagree. If he's able to keep that distance and really keep the strikes on, maybe play a little bit more aggressive than he has been in his past fights, where he was a little bit more conservative. And that's kind of where the narratives of Israel Adesanya being a boring fighter originated. But if he's able to keep it up on the ground, or like up from the ground, and able to strike and do what Israel Adesanya does, I have Israel Adesanya winning this fight. And Israel Adesanya 3.0 or whatever 0.0 we're on title run starts now. So thank you for my history lesson.
Okay, I don't know how people would see him as boring. Like if he has a beautiful fighting style, like I get like I'll use a soccer analogy. Like some people find the European way of playing soccer, even though within the European style of playing soccer, there's like multiple different ways of playing it. Like, but a lot of people's experience with European soccer is the English style, which is like this possession-based style where it's like beautiful, like cross-field passing, like playing keep away, and it's beautiful, but people think it's boring. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, because it was kind of keep away. He was always like 5 feet back, and somebody would step, he would step back, because he has like really long limbs. And then like near like the 1 minute mark, he might land 1, 2, 3, bump, and then step back. That was like a lot of his later fights in his title reign. But like earlier, like when he was like kind of like up and coming, he was like very famous for like not being so distant, but also like being up close, like throwing like major combos, not getting tired of it from it, and then just kind of like continuing. So like the fact that he was kind of like keeping it at a distance. I'm sorry, there's just thunder, and I think my dog got a little bit scared. So.
Oh, good. No, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that. So it's kind of similar in the sense how people find like the English style of soccer, where it's like these looping, beautiful passes to maintain possession, and then attack once they've finally worn down the enemy or like the opponent. It's kind of similar to that. Okay.
But then a lot of MMA fans also find like grappling boring, which a lot of if somebody's telling you this is a boring fighter, it usually means he's not just like throwing a lot of punches. So like a lot of MMA fans don't like to admit it, they're just a fan of boxing, but they like boxing with MMA rules, which I'm all down for a good MMA slugfest with the next guy. Like I love it as much as the next guy, but also sometimes I feel like the fan narratives of this is boring or this isn't like entertaining for a fight, I feel like is a little bit overstated.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna try and pay attention to some of the fight nights. I've got a swim meet this weekend, so we'll see. Maybe during one of my breaks, I can catch a free version on the TikTok live, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
That's how I've been started watching them, is instead of paying for ESPN Plus, which I need to re-download because Providence College hockey is really good this year, and that's
Hmm.
where all their games are, and I want to be able to watch them without having to go all the way down to Providence. So who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe I'll buy ESPN Plus for. I mean, $10 a month isn't bad. So maybe I'll
Yeah.
buy ESPN Plus so I can catch some more of these.
Most of the fight nights, like I don't think they're only keeping this one on ESPN Plus because it's like an actual like potential moneymaker, but most fight nights, like up to this one, were on Disney Plus too.
Oh wow, Disney sanctions this shit.
Yeah, Disney owns ESPN.
Oh yeah, I know, but
But
like,
that actually gets into another interesting conversation. So by the end of this year, the UFC's contract with ESPN should be complete. So there's going to be interesting, like, there's a lot of interesting conversations about where the direction of the UFC is going to go from here, or if they re-sign with ESPN, which I hope they don't. What I'm hoping they do is I hope they take up so the UFC is owned by a larger company called TKO, and TKO also owns WWE. And what I've been paying attention to is WWE now has a spot where their Monday night show, Monday Night Raw, is on Netflix. So what I'm hoping is that Netflix buys a contract with UFC and we get more showings on Netflix, because I think that's the direction Netflix is starting to try to go into now. They started it with the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, which was lukewarm. Not that the fight was boring. Well,
it
I've
buffered
already
every 10 seconds.
I've already talked about the fight, but the presentation itself, it buffered every 10 seconds. But Netflix is starting to try to get into the world of sports more. So I do think Netflix is going to try to make a play for buying out a UFC contract, which if they do, I'd be very interested in, because I think maybe the pay-per-view model might be dying. But that's an interesting conversation for another day, because everybody's illegally streaming now. Like pay-per-view numbers are down, but like the UFC has never been more popular. But like nobody wants to buy an $80 pay-per-view. But if it's on Netflix for free, hell, if it's on Netflix, which is a platform everybody has, you could probably charge $10, $20, and I'd still buy that. But I'm not buying $80 and going onto a platform like ESPN Plus, which is something a lot of people don't have already. So
Yeah,
I think this next year is going to be very telling in the direction of how MMA is consumed going forward, because it's getting bigger and bigger every year. But just I don't think the pay-per-view model is really substantial for that growth.
shout
Like it
out
makes
Stream
it,
Ace.
yeah, like it does. Like I imagine, like I'd be stupid in saying it doesn't give them money. Like obviously they're averaging probably like 500K buys, but you're not going to get a like even if Conor McGregor were to come back, which is highly unlikely, he's not the same draw as he was in the past. Like the days of like 1 million buys for a pay-per-view fight, I think are over, because everyone's illegally streaming now. I think the future is going to be playing into more mainstream ways of consuming MMA, like that are more user friendly,
Yeah,
which I think would be great for the sport, because I want, as crazy as it sounds, I want MMA to be like as mainstream as football. Like I want, like now it's like kind of weird, because like if you're out on a Saturday night or if you're working, like there's very few bars that are actually paying to like watch a pay-per-view, but there's always like that one guy that might have ESPN Plus on his phone and then like the whole bar's like standing around him. It's very hard to find a place that actually buys like pay-per-views for MMA, which kind of leads you to like sometimes maybe a Hooters or something like that, which different story for a different day.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, if you go back in America's history, do you know what used to be the most popular sport before?
Boxing.
Before medical research took off, boxing.
Yeah.
Boxing was more popular than football. Maybe not college football. College football, believe it or not, used to do better ratings than the NFL in the early 1900s. When boxing was king, the NFL was considered a joke. Like, they even played an all-star game between college and the NFL, and the college teams would win. The college teams would win. The college all-stars would win. But I just think the pay-per-view, I think they might have gone to the pay-per-view model. This is just my guess. This isn't me saying anything definitive. They might have gone to the pay-per-view model because popularity in fighting sports had dropped. And I think now that fighting sports again are on the rise, they can afford to move away from that pay-per-view model. Because I think what's best for MMA right now is, like you said, them going away. I feel like that takes away having a pay-per-view model kind of added a barrier to entry for a while for some people. But now that things like Stream East or just watching it on TikTok Live are an option now, I think having it be on mainstream cable would help kind of, further decrease the barrier to entry, because not everyone wants to risk their computer and go on Stream East, or not everyone wants to go on TikTok Live for different various reasons.
Yeah.
Whether the host is annoying or like, I'll put the stream back up if someone sends me $10. I'll put it back up if someone Venmo me $100. Because there was one fight I was watching where it's like, I go and turn it back on until someone Venmo me. And I'm like, fuck this. And swiped off of it.
Hey, yo, they trying to take down the live. Give me a galaxy. Nah.
We're not mean.
No. I mean, hey, I've got love for the those brave soldiers that illegally stream on TikTok.
Not the ones who are like, hey, send me $10 and I'll keep the stream up.
I mean, I know we're getting a little bit late now, but I'll never forget, like, one of the best forms of piracy that I never saw it personally, but I believe it was Conor McGregor versus Khabib, and it was like the biggest fight. And this guy found a way to legally stream it on Twitch, which, like, Twitch is like very heavy. Like, you can't find a UFC fight on Twitch. That's a no-go zone. That's like the most popular, and like also it's very well regulated, and there's a lot of money that goes into Twitch. And then also the UFC knows that, and then the UFC kind of like pays them to like absolutely cut everything. But there was this one guy who he faked streaming the fight by holding a controller up. You know, like,
no, I'm losing.
Yo, this crazy, guys. Hey yo, I'm losing, guys.
Is that why I can't find fake streams in the NFL? Is the NFL paid? It's like you can find any college football game you want on YouTube. Like, you can find the live stream on YouTube. Does the NFL like pay YouTube for them to like police the shit out of that then too?
Yeah.
Oh, boo.
But also they have like NFL moderators that are on YouTube like full time, like when a game's on, and just going like, oh, this person got it immediately off.
Man, I wish I had that job.
Whereas I think in college there's just so many games, and there's no like commissioner of NCAA.
There might be in a bit, but that's a story for another day.
Yes.
That'll be the title of this episode.
But that's a story for another day.
But that's a story for another day. But you know what isn't? ED Cooley Crying. Should I clickbait the hell out of this title? ED Cooley Crying on 4K.
Nah, change his thumbnail. We gotta make a new thumbnail. And it's just like do like superimpose like the Michael Jordan crying meme on like Ed Cooley. Just put God in 4K.
I'll try and figure that out. Ed Cooley Crying, AFC Championship review, Ed Cooley Crying, and that's a story for another day. We're devious.
I
If
saw
they make
Ed
it this
Cooley crying in 4K in Fortnite
in Fortnite, cops called.
at 3 a.m.
I think that'll do it for us here at
Yeah.
Tobacco Run Abroad. Thank you for listening. If you've made it this far, you'll hear our grand plan to get this video to take off. I doubt it will, but just making fun of early 2010s YouTube. Thank you for listening in, and we'll talk to you guys next week.